teaching, we will go over Facing Your Shadow Self by combining the Guardian of the Threshold lecture by Rudolf Steiner from Knowledge of Higher Worlds and its Attainment with the Seraphim teachings from our Pearl Code books. For those who are new to this channel, these are channel teachings that were given to me when I was ascended via the Seraphim Guardians and shown the Sapphire Tablets in the Pearl Garden. All this information is transcribed within the Pearl Code books that are on your screen. If you prefer to read this teaching because it is very extensive, please reference the blog linked below. I will be reading from this entire Rudolf Steiner lecture in addition to elaborating some with what the Seraphim are sharing in reference to this lecture. We will start from our most recent codex, Ascension Gates and One for Awakening, with what the Seraphim speak of how the collective is now facing their shadows with this massive purge that is taking place. The collective can no longer avoid their shadows, as plasma light emits from the external and internal suns of Gaia. It illuminates the 7th and 9th chakras. The 9th chakra is creating a grand illumination within all physical homes, filtering this light into the body through channels such as the vagus nerve. This causes symptoms such as depression for those who have more blocked energy. It is during this stage that all who have not faced the shadows will come face to face with it and become masters of the night. This is a time when these souls will face their deepest fears, as all masks will be removed. It is during this stage that the light will penetrate the barrier walls, these are the masks, within all, and illuminate what has been kept hidden there. These fears must arise so they can become transmuted. Buried no more will the secrets of mankind be. The secrets of mankind have many layers with many meanings. The current task for those committed to their spiritual awakening journey is to face their shadows, and Rudolf calls this the Guardian of the Threshold. This is an archetypal entity that stands between the physical and spiritual worlds and challenges you to face your shadow and fears before allowing you to cross into higher realms of consciousness. This is the hardest task, and one must dive into the deepest layers of self. They must traverse the darkest parts of the forest of the night. This has to be done in order for you to be prepared for what is beyond that threshold. Your goal within this mortal life is to become the conqueror of self, to traverse this forest within the dark shadows of the night, and gain freedom from its chains by drinking from the well within. The keys that will unlock the gates found upon this pathway are granted by way of self-understanding, self-mastery, and conquest of the seed hidden in the well. This is the very sapphire seed hidden within all that stem from the eternal sapphire flame under the mighty throne of the incomprehensible one. A mortal soul enters life upon the earth world, seeking the path inward to discovering who they are. This path is a journey of the 7 owls that the Seraphim teach in the Ascension Gates in the One for Awakening book. These 7 owls can be linked to the 7 circles upon the seed of life symbol. This journey will start with the 7 circles separated, having the outer circles surrounding the other 6 like a bullseye. As one advances in life upon this path, they will venture further inward until they reach the most inner circle of self. The innermost dwelling of your Christ seed can be found in this circle. This can be seen as the very well of wisdom that's hidden deep within the forest. So now, let us now return to this lecture. The important experiences marking the student's ascent into the higher worlds include his meeting with the Guardian of the Threshold. Strictly speaking, there are 2 guardians, a lesser and a greater. The student meets the lesser guardian when the threads connecting, willing, feeling, and thinking within the finer astral and etheric bodies begin to loosen. In this way, described in the foregoing chapter, the greater guardian is encountered when the sundering of the connections extends to the physical parts of the body, that is, at first, to the brain. The lesser guardian is a sovereign being. He does not come into existence, as far as the student is concerned, until the latter has reached the Rescuit stage of development. Only some of his most important characteristics can be indicated. The attempt will now be made to describe in narrative form this meeting with the lesser guardian of the threshold, as a result of which the student learns that his thinking, feeling, and willing have become released from within him, from their inherent connection. A truly terrible spectral being confronts him, and he will need all the presence of mind and faith and the security of his path, which he has had ample opportunity to acquire in the course of his previous training. The guardian proclaims his signification somewhat in the following words: "Hitherto, powers invisible to thyself watched over thee. They saw to it that in the course of thy lives, each of thy good deeds brought its reward, and each of thine evil deeds was attended by its evil results. Thanks to their influence, thy character formed itself out of thy life experiences and thy thoughts. They were the instruments of thy destiny. They adorned that measure of joy and pain allotted to thee in thine incarnations, according to thy conduct in lives gone by. They ruled over thee as the all-embracing law of karma. These powers will now partly release thee from their constricting influence, and henceforth must thou accomplish for thyself a part of the work which hitherto they performed for thee. Destiny struck thee many a hard blow in the past. Thou knewest not why. Each blow was the consequence of a harmful deed in a bygone lie. Thou fondest joy and gladness, and thou didst take them as they came. They too were the fruits of former deeds. Thy character shows many a beautiful side, and many an ugly flaw. Thou hast thyself to thank for both, for they are the result of thy previous experiences and faults. These were till now unknown to thee. Their effects alone were made manifest. The karmic powers, however, beheld all thy deeds in former lives, and all thy most secret thoughts and feelings, and determined accordingly thy present self and thy present mode of life. But now all the good and evil sides of thy bygone lives shall be revealed to thee. Hitherto they were interwoven with thine own being. They were in thee, and thou couldst not see them, even as thou canst not behold thine own brain with physical eyes. But know they become released from thee. They detach themselves from thy personality. They assume an independent form, which thou cannot see, even as thou beholdest the stones and plants of the outer world." Let us pause and reflect for a moment. In Inject Pearls 144, under the Eye Tapestry section, we speak of the tapestry of creation located in the halls of Kala that the Seraphim showed me. Within each cord houses multiple threads. These threads come together and move apart with each choice you make upon that timeline. Keep in mind that what the Seraphim teach is that every action affects everything in existence. That action includes your own thoughts. These are the power of your thoughts. Hence why you have aspects of yourself as well, because these are part of those threads that they talk about. These higher aspects are guiding you now per each decision you make can disrupt or mend a thread upon the tapestry of creation. If the threads are not woven together, then the cord cannot pass through the eye of the needle, which the Seraphim teach as the ascension gateway for humanity. Humanity is at a stage where many threads of time that once were severed are being mended back together in order to pass through this gateway. It is the very light warriors, the few chosen, who are doing this on an individual level right now, because this in turn will help release the shadows of the collective in this gateway for healing. We teach how these aspects you are facing are not to be feared or to be ashamed of. They are for you to love. It is by way of love that they become healed and return to source. It is by way of love that the chains and illusions that bind your soul in the cage of flesh are dissolved. Think of the elephant. It is the strongest animal in the forest. Visualize it. Yet, when it is chained, it does not try to break free because it is under the drunkenness of illusion that it is powerless. Only when it remembers who it is, when it remembers its sovereignty and its power, does it free itself. This is the test for your own psychological fortitude as you are currently facing this threshold. So let us now return to this lecture. And I am that very being who shaped my body out of thy good and evil achievements. My spectral form is woven out of thine own life's record. Till now thou hast borne me invisibly within thee, and it was well that this was so, for the wisdom of thy destiny, though concealed from thee, could this work within thee, so that the hideous stains on my form could be blotted out. Now that I have come forth from within thee, that concealed wisdom too has departed from thee. It will pay no further heed to thee. It will leave the work in thy hands alone. I must become a perfect and glorious being, or fall a prey to corruption. And should this occur, I would drag thee also down with me into a dark and corrupt world. If thou wouldest avoid this, then thine own wisdom must become great enough to undertake the task of that other concealed wisdom which has departed from thee. As a form visible to thyself, I will never for an instant leave thy side, once thou hast crossed my threshold. And in future, whenever thou dost act or think wrongly, thou wilt straightway perceive thy guilt as a hideous, demoniacal distortion of my form. Only when thou hast made good all thine bygone wrongs, and hast so purified thyself that all further evil is, for thee, a thing impossible, only then will my being have become transformed into radiant beauty. Then too shall I again become unified with thee for the welfare of thy future activity. Yet my threshold is fashioned out of all the timidity that remains in thee, out of all the dread of the strength needed to take full responsibility for all thy thoughts and actions. As long as there remains in thee a trace of fear of becoming thyself the guide of thine own destiny, just so long will this threshold lack what still remains to be built into it. And as long as a single stone is found missing, just so long must thou remain standing as thou transfixed or else stumble. Seek not then to cross this threshold until thou dost feel thyself entirely free from fear and ready for the highest responsibility. Hitherto I only emerged from thy personality when death recalled thee from an earthly life. But even then my form was veiled from thee. Only the powers of destiny who watched over thee beheld me and could thus, in the intervals between death and a new birth, build in thee, in accordance with my appearance, that power and capacity, thanks to which thou couldst labor in a new earth life at the beautifying of my form. For thy welfare and progress, it was I too, whose imperfection ever and again constrained the powers of destiny to lead thee back to a new incarnation upon life. I was present at the hour of thy death, and it was on my account that the lords of karma ordained thy reincarnation. And it is only by thus unconsciously transforming me to complete perfection in ever recurring earthly lives that thou couldst have escaped the powers of death and passed over into immortality united with me. Visible do I thus stand before thee today, just as I have shaved over stood invisible beside thee in the hour of death. When thou shalt have crossed my threshold, thou wilt enter these realms to which thou hast hitherto only had access after physical death. Thou dost now enter them with full knowledge, and henceforth, as thou wanderest outwardly visible upon the earth, thou wilt at the same time wander in the kingdom of death, that is, in the kingdom of life eternal. I am indeed the angel of death, but I am at the same time the bearer of a higher life without end. Through me, thou wilt die with thy body still living, to be reborn into an imperishable existence. Let me pause real quick and explain that when I was before what this entity is calling the angel of death, which some people call it the Grim Reaper, I did not have fear. I did not feel fear from this entity. I felt love. I saw it as a mirror. And the knowledge that this entity gave me was that it said, where you are is the land of the dead, because only there do you have a beginning and an ending. Beyond this threshold, beyond me, is life. This is the land of the living, because it is only here to become one with life again. It is only here does immortality reign, and there is no ending. I will now return to the lecture. Into this kingdom thou art now entering. Thou wilt meet beings that are super sensible, and happiness will be thy lot. But I myself must provide thy first acquaintance with that world, and I am thy own creation. Formerly I drew my life from thine, but now thou hast awakened me to a separate existence, so that I stand before thee as the visible gauge of thy future deeds. Perhaps, too, as thy constant reproach. Thou hast formed me, but by doing so thou hast undertaken as thy duty to transform me. What is here indicated in narrative form must not be understood in the same sense of an allegory, but as an experience of the highest possible reality befallen the esoteric student. The guardian must warn him not to go a step further unless he feels in himself the strength to fulfill the demands made in the above speech. However horrible the form assumed by the guardian, it is only the effect of the student's own past life, his own character risen out of him into independent existence. This awakening is brought about by the separation of will, thought, and feeling. To feel for the first time that one has oneself called a spiritual being into existence is in itself an experience of deepest significance. The student's preparation must aim at enabling him to endure the terrible sight without a trace of timidity, and at the moment of the meeting to feel his strength so increased that he can undertake fully conscious the responsibility of transforming the beauty of the guardian. This is, let me pause for a second. So what the Seraphim teach from the Ascension Gates book is they say, the idea of pain and struggle is to purge us and inspire in us a longing to rise above the regions of pain and shadow. At the present time, we are sovereigns in the country of the negative power, and our first duty is to find our way back to our own home, because this is not your home. This flesh is not your home. Fear is not your home. Fear does not exist. It is simply false evidence appearing real. So when this guardian stands before you, the master, the student who has worked hard, will not have fear. Therefore, you should not have fear of what is it that will be. You should not have regret over what has been. you should simply trust and have faith. Because if you have fear, if you have regret, if you have resentment, okay, if you have loneliness, then you are not trusting. You are not giving full faith. This is where patience comes in, and trust. One must fully trust in divine. In Ascension Gates, they also say that the negative power is the head of the shadows. All 144 degrees of existence is both that of light, which is positive, and of the shadows, which is negative. This is in us all. So when this guardian, these shadows are before you, this is the test of all tests. It is when you see existence as both, and that both need each other to contract and expand, that you become a true master. Think of all that you have endured in this life. Now think of all the wisdom and strength that you gain from it. Did those experiences not teach you, make you wise, make you stronger? The pearl cannot manifest itself as its true luminous glory until it has accepted all the grit. So let us now return back to this lecture. If successful, this meeting with the guardian results in the student's next physical death being an entirely different event from the death as he knew it formerly. He experiences death consciously by laying aside the physical body as one discards a garment that is worn out or perhaps rendered useless through a sudden rent. Thus, his physical death is of special importance only for those living with him, whose perception is still restricted to the world of the physical senses. For them, the student dies. But for himself, nothing of importance is changed in his whole environment. The entire supersensible world stood open to him before his death, and it is the same world that now confronts him after death. The guardian of the threshold is also connected with other matters. The person belonging to a family, a nation, a race. His activity in this world deepens upon his belonging to some such community. His individual character is also connected with it. The conscious activity of individual persons by no means exhausts everything to be reckoned within a family, a nation, or a race. Besides their character, families, nations, and races have also their own destiny as a collective. Also, their own karma, you guys. For persons restricted to their senses, these things remain mere general ideas, and the materialistic thinker, in his prejudice, will look down with contempt on the spiritual science when he hears that from him, family and national character or his racial destiny are vested in beings such as real as the personality in which the character and destiny of the individual man are vested. The spiritual scientist becomes acquainted with higher worlds of which the separate personalities are members, just as arms and legs are members of the human being, of your actual body. You have these extensions. Besides the separate individuals, a very real family and national group soul and racial spirit is at work in the life of a family, a people, or a race. Indeed, in a certain sense, the separate individuals are merely the executive organs of these family group souls, racial spirits, and so on. It is nothing but the truth to say, for instance, that a national group soul makes use of each individual man belonging to that nation for the execution of some type of work. The group soul of a people does not descend into physical reality, but dwells in a higher world, and in order to work in the physical world, makes use of the physical organs of each individual human being. In a higher sense, it is like an architect making use of workmen for executing the details of a building. In the true sense, everyone receives his allotted task from his family, nationality, or his racial group soul. So this is all the stuff, you guys, that you're working through. So now when you look at it this light, it's more expanded. It's just not about you as an individual, but it's, what is it that you're having to work through when it comes to the shadows of your immediate family, of your expanded family, of the community that you live in? Is it a religious group that you were part of? You have to go through that. What are the karmas attached to that religion? What are the karmas attached to the nation that you're part of? This is all the things that those who are on their spiritual journey are also working through. So this is where you have to give yourself grace, because it is a lot that you're doing for the collective as well as the individual self. Now, the ordinary person is by no means initiated into the higher design of his work. He joins unconsciously in the task of his people and of his race. From the moment the student meets the guardian, he must not only know his own task, but must knowingly collaborate in those of his folk, his race. Every extension of his horizon necessarily enlarges the scope of his duties. What actually happens is that the student aids a new body to his finer soul body. He puts on a second garment. Hitherto, he found his way through the world with the coverings enveloping his personality. Because, let me pause, you guys. That's what makes your personality. Your personality is molded by your immediate family, your extended family, the community that you're part of, your social group, blah, 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 all that. That's what molds your personality. That personality is not who you are at a soul level. Let me continue. And what he had to accomplish for his community, his nation, his race was directed by higher spirits who made use of his personality. And now a further revelation made to him by the guardian of the threshold is that henceforth these spirits will withdraw their guiding hand from him. He must step out of the circle of his community. Yet, as an isolated personality, he would become hardened in himself and declined into ruin, did he not himself acquire those powers which are vested in the national and rational spirits. Many, no doubt, will say, "Oh, I have entirely freed myself from all lineal and racial connections. I only want to be a human being, and nothing but a human being." To these one must reply, who then brought you to this freedom? Was it not your family who placed you in the world where you now stand? Have you not your lineage, your nation, your race to thank for being what you are? They have brought you up. And if now exalted above all prejudices, you are one of the light bringers and benefactors of your stock and even of your race, it is to their upbringing that you owe it. Yes, even when you say you are nothing but a human being, even the fact that you have become such a personality, you owe to the spirits of your communities. Only the esoteric student learns what it means to be entirely cut off from his family, national, or racial spirit. He alone realizes through personal experience the insignificance of all such education in respect of the life now confronting him. For everything incalculated. Sorry, you guys, I'm listening to the angels as I'm reading. But education completely melts away when the threads binding will, thought, and feeling are severed. He looks back on the result of all his previous education as he might on a house crumbling away, brick by brick, which all must now rebuild in a new form. And again, it is more than a mere symbolical expression to say that when the guardian has first said that his statement and he rises from the spot where he stands, a whirlwind extinguishes all those spiritual lights that have hitherto illuminated the path of his life. Utter darkness, relieved only by the rays issuing from the guardian himself, unfolds before the student, and out of this darkness resounds the guardian's further admonition. Step not across my threshold until thou dost clearly realize that thou with thyself illumine the darkness ahead of thee. Take not a single step forward until thou art positive that thou hast sufficient oil in thine own lamp. The lamps of the guides whom thou hast hitherto followed will now no longer be available to thee. let me pause from this lecture. So it is why in the books, the Seraphim say that that last leg of your journey is to be done alone. This is also why they say many times throughout the teachings that this should be done naturally and not forced. Because if you force yourself and you try to thrush past this threshold, you will fall further and harder than ever before. And so this is what is so important in this lecture. Okay, so moving forward. At these words, the student must turn and glance backward. The guardian of the threshold now draws aside a veil, which till now had concealed deep life mysteries. The family, national, and rational spirits are revealed to the student in their full activity, so that he perceives clearly, on the one hand, how he has hitherto been led, and no less clearly, on the other hand, that he will henceforward no longer enjoy this guidance. That is the second warning received at the threshold from its guardian. Without preparation, no one could endure the sight of what has been indicated. But the higher training which makes it possible at all for the student to advance up to the threshold simultaneously puts him in a position to find the necessary strength at the right moment. Indeed, the training can be so harmonious in its nature that the entry into the higher life is relieved of everything of an agitating or tumultuous character. His experience at the threshold will then be attended by a premonition of that felicity which is to provide the keynote of his newly awakened life. The feeling of a new freedom will outweigh all other feelings, and attended by this feeling, his new duties and responsibilities will appear as something which man at a particular stage of life must take upon himself. So this concludes the lecture, but before I continue with what the Seraphim wanted me to add, the higher you ascend, the more responsibilities that you have. And so it's no different than when you have a job and you want to, climb up the ladder. You have more responsibilities, but you have to have experience. You have to have knowledge for that. Or in order to become a surgeon, you have to go to school. You have to learn how to operate on the body. You have to understand how everything works. Okay. You have to know the precautions. And so this is the importance of doing things step by step and having patience and having grace and going through everything before you get to this spot, because on that last leg everything will fall silent. You have to do it on your own. And so you have to learn how to connect deep within yourself. You have to reconnect and disconnect from the ego and reconnect to that pillar of light, which is always guiding you. But part of this jump is to have faith and to trust in this. So we conclude this with what the Seraphim say from the Proko book. Time itself is the dark night of the soul. Night is a symbol of time because it is the realm of the shadows, the very expression of a desire to create without the light seed of the one who receives nothing. The one is a luminous pearl of white light because it is composed of all 144 rays of existence. Therefore, it is likened to the white light spectrum, emitting all colors. It is because it illuminates all life that it is the light-giving light we call day, hence the term Ancient of Days. The shadows is a gloomy black pearl that reflects no light because it seeks absorption. Therefore, we call it night. To absorb is to internalize, take in the essence of divine outside of yourself, and blend as one with it. Only then will you become illuminated. You have to see yourself as one with everything, not better than and not separated from. The key is always inside of you. It starts with self-love. This will then illuminate your shadows, but also your light. One must always roar like a lion in the darkness, yet be gentle like a lamb in the light. You are the beauty of a rose and the strength of its thorns. Mastery is obtained when you accept this and no longer deny nor resist. Existence is poetry in motion. Emotions are dancing art. Be the poetry of a butterfly and the art of the night sky with no frame. Truth is a divine revelation found within, and not a construction of a human design.